Welcome to another episode of Shift with Elena. God, in this conversation, I'm joined by Stephen Seidel. He's an entrepreneur, creative connector, and the founder of Seidel Agency and Gents Journey. The conversation dives deep into self-awareness, personal branding, and the challenges of showing up authentically in today's world of content creation. Stephen also shared his journey behind Gents Journey, a men's mental health collective born out of personal grief, change, and the quest for meaningful connection. If you've ever struggled with vulnerability, wondered how to stay true to your mission, or simply want to hear inspiring stories about resilience, creativity, and human connection, this episode is for you. Check it out. As always, leave a review, please share, and come back for more. Stephen, welcome to the Shift Podcast.
Thank you. Shift happens.
Yes, yes. And you've had many shifts in your life. So before we dive into the work that you're doing today and the kind of the speaking engagements, the work that you do with clients and companies, take me back to, I like to take people back to maybe like your university studies. I'm always curious how people fall into the kind of the careers that they have and what inspired them to start those journeys. So take me back to those days or maybe earlier, whenever you want to start.
Yeah, I'm going to start with my dream in life has always been to be a great father. And part of that stems from having my parents divorced when I was one. And so going back and forth, I started to be in the middle of it all. And so I became the people pleaser. And so it was always like navigating things and felt this great need to sort of be the connective tissue. So that stemmed into me becoming a connector and really connecting on a deeper level, relationship wise, meaningful wise. But eventually I got to the point where it was time for college and my parents like, oh, you're really talented in science and mathematics. But I had this love of creative expression and storytelling because that allowed me to share and do things that maybe I didn't feel comfortable with because of the people pleasing atmosphere. Needless to say, I went to Penn State. It was a local university. My sister had gone there. And so I'm from Pennsylvania and I went to Penn State for industrial engineering. And so I started down industrial engineering, which is process improvements. It's like business, but it's also the scientific aspect of making things, function better, optimizing them and becoming more efficient. And so I ended up in that, but I felt a little bit stuck because I wasn't really exploring the balance of the left brain and the right brain. But for that time frame in college, I was an engineer and I used to work for Motorola, making semi-conductor chips for cell phones straight out of college.
Oh, very cool. Very, very interesting. And so at what point did you decide to start the Seidel agency? Seidel agency.
Yeah, no worries. So out of college, I was an engineer and then I got laid off. I've gotten laid off 3 times in my life. And so that's one of the things that, we're seeing a lot more in today's present day is no longer are you at a company for 20, 30 years like my father was. He worked at Unisys. So I got laid off and I said, all right, this is it. I'm going to go to New York. I started to pursue entertainment. And so I initially was going to be an NBC page. That didn't quite work out. Long story, but then I started to pursue acting and entertainment. So I was an actor for a period of time. It was about 10 years, but that was really a deep exploration of what really mattered to me. It was very therapeutic, doing method acting in different areas and exploring and expressing myself. And so then it came to a point where I was tired of giving my power away. And I realized, look, if I really want to make something out of this life, sitting in an audition room and getting rejected, 10 times a week is not necessarily very empowering in the path that I want to go down. So I decided, hey, I can create content and I can create, marketing materials myself without having to give my power away. So I took my left brain and my right brain, my statistical analyses and my creative expression and poem writing, and then started working. And I created a bunch of content. I was a YouTube influencer back in 2011 before YouTube was YouTube. I did the first live comedy stream on YouTube as part of OmniVision Entertainment. They paid us, I think it was $12,000. They said, hey, go make 24 episodes. And so it did. So that was the first time. So it was a YouTube. And then that sort of reached a plateau where I was having a hard time monetizing that. And then I started to sell YouTube videos for another agency. Because at that time, people were growing followers. There was money to be made on YouTube. So I learned that you could actually create content. And this is kind of where we're at now with AI. These jobs were developing that I never learned about before. So they were creating content. They were family vloggers, and they were selling videos for 5,000. This company was doubling the price, or selling pre-rolls for 25 cents a CPV, which is basically, a fancy way of saying in the middle of the video there would be an ad. Finally, I was like, I can do this myself, and so I decided to take all of the things that I've learned and started the Seidel agency and have been doing it ever since.
Very cool. That's cool to take it back. I'm fairly new to the whole I mean, new is like probably the last 5 years in the whole like YouTube game. So it's always amazing to me how long it's actually been around. And it doesn't feel like that long, but when you go back, you're like, wait a minute, like a lot has happened since YouTube launched, since all this, content creation, personal branding has kind of really taken center stage and really trumped everything else in terms of entertainment. It's pretty cool. And you saw it from the beginning. That's very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, there were so I've noticed in my life, I've been at the fort, been able to experience a lot of the shifts, going back to shifts. The shift in communication from regular telephones to wireless telephones. The shift in communication from using regular snail mail, U.S. Postal Service, to email. And then I was fortunate enough to be a part of, I funded my own film when I was an actor. And we're crowdfunding now. It's the norm, right? You see it everywhere. And now we're just seeing a lot of these things that are unfolding. And so for me, it's been quite a journey to watch, even just YouTube. I kind of kick myself and say, oh, what if I would have just stayed doing YouTube? I had a couple of shows and things that I did. Previously, I had a show called Renegade Reporting where I would go out and report. This is CNN I Report. I don't know if you've ever even heard of it, but citizen journalism was at the forefront, and CNN was on board, and I was one of the premier providers for CNN I Report, where they hired a bunch of individuals. They hit the streets and do the reports, but now they just kind of tap into social media and use that for their content. So it's ever evolving right now with brands and content creators. I mean, if you're a company wanting to access audiences, that's as native as it gets. And these people are engaged and following what's happening. And so it's been really interesting to see the change.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've learned through content creation and just like creating a personal brand is that there's a whole lot of level of self-awareness. There's a lot of things that start to come up when you try to identify what you stand for, what are your values, who you are, how you want to represent yourself, and so on. So a lot of uncomfortable things. And I think it's just a process that takes time. And I think that's why content creation is so uncomfortable for a lot of people because it takes time to get good at it. And you never get like great and you're like, oh, I'm just done. It's a continuous journey. And so I want to talk a little about that because I know you do a lot of work within that space and really addressing those thoughts, addressing that. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest challenges with, my company or organization, whether I'm coaching leaders or C-suite or working potential partners, is oftentimes they are hesitant. If they're a founder, or if they're a CEO or somebody who started they really are hesitant to get in front of the camera or to really share their beliefs or to be authentic. But as we've seen the shift, if you will, from previous highly produced videos, now you can create videos, with the computer, aka phone in your pocket, for next to nothing. And so really fine tuning what it is that your voice is. And we typically walk through a process where we start with your mission. What is it that you're doing? What's your why? How are you connecting to your purpose or your company or whatever that is? And then we go into your message. How are you connecting to your people, your target audience? And then we get more into your media and the relationships that you're building in the community. And then we really want to build a movement. And that's with anything that we're doing. We want people to believe in you. We want to have that trust, that transparency, that truthfulness, and that integrity that you're delivering on camera. And so it's a process. Even now, I have a company. It's called Gents Journey. It's a men's health collective, and we're testing things out. And so for the past 2 months, we have 3 members in our group. We said, okay, everybody's just going to film a video. We're not going to worry about what it looks like. It's going to be less than a minute because it's now bite-sized. We need it to be super short. The attention spans have dropped off. So if you're creating videos, it does not need to be polished. It's actually better to not be polished. And the greener it is, or the more authentic, or the rough around the edges, that's believability. That's truth. That's transparency. Especially with AI, the things that are like you're questionable with deep fakes. If I hear a kid screaming in the background, or you drop your phone, or you do something like that, that's actually more believable. That allows me to like you more because you're being yourself. You are unique and authentic. And so with the Gents Journey that I talked about, we're actually just recording one less than 60-second video per day. We're focusing primarily on YouTube because of its discoverability, because with Google, it's a lot more discoverable. And then it has a really great YouTube studio from an analytics perspective. So for any company or organization, you are your brand. It's more important now than ever because social media is word of mouth marketing. It's a content machine that needs to be fed every single day. So just record and put it out there and record and put it out there. And what we tell clients is pretend like you're on a FaceTime call. So pretend like you're talking to your mom, because too often we get nervous, we get preachy. Just envision who your target audience is, but it's easier just to envision your mom, your best friend, your wife, your husband, and just talk to them, hold up the phone like you're doing a FaceTime call, record it and ship it. Record it and ship it. And so that's what we're doing with Gent Journey, and we've been surprised to see certain videos that we never thought would really gain momentum, actually gaining momentum. And it's due to a number of things, but you just need to record, you need to ship it, and every brand or company or organization needs a face. They have to have a personality, and they have to have somebody that they're being able to trust and believe in and connect with.
What inspired you to start the Gents Journey? Because it seems like, especially it's more focused on men's mental health. So what prompted you, I guess, to combine the two parts of what you're doing into this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I think for me, it's a personal journey. And so for about 15, the agencies have been roughly like 10 to 15 years. But my mom ultimately got sick. I relocated my business in 2020 from California to Kentucky during the pandemic. And so within that year, I had every major life experience. I had a relocation of job, home. I bought a new house, my first house. I had a newborn who was 1 year old. And then I also experienced the fact that my mom was given a cancer diagnosis. And so that was really tough for me. And she was the closest person in my entire life. I actually was running my business out of my house at the time, and I had to put her in my bedroom that I was using. I was taking Zoom calls. It was down like one client. I was taking Zoom calls out of the laundry room and putting a logo over my shoulder, just trying to survive because I knew I was the only person working. So I had to take care of my family, take care of my mother, take care of my wife and my kids. It was the most challenging moment of my life. And so I'm taking a breath because that's what we need to do. In that moment, I knew that I was struggling because my business was virtual. So all my clients were virtual. I had no colleagues. I had no friends because I was in a new town and the whole world was shut down. And it was my wife and my dying mother. And it was so hard for me. So I decided I need to do something about it. And I decided to start a online men's collective. And I looked around at all my closest friends and I said, I need to find my growth friends. These are the friends that empower me because we're a product of people who are, the closest to us. So I hand selected 5 individuals. And we started doing Zoom calls, and then we do them every Monday. And this was a safe space for me. So I was at my bottom, and it was a 3-part process. I had to just really reconnect to who I was and what I wanted to do. And for me, it was about giving, being of service, and working with people that want to inspire change in this world. And then I had to rebuild these relationships because I had nobody really to lean on. And so that's where I started, was with this men's group. And we were open, we were vulnerable, and we were sharing. And vulnerability was invincibility in these moments. And then that really allowed me to understand and process the grief. Ultimately, I did lose my mom, but I was able to understand that this was just a moment in time. And for me, grief is a moment of healing, and it's realizing that love never goes anywhere. These are all teaching moments, and having these men to support me, it was pretty transformational. And so that's when we started Gents Journey, and now we have a really cool product. It's called the Journey Deck. We also have the locker room, where the Journey Deck is 52 cards with questions so that men can connect to each other and be open and be vulnerable, and leaders can ask questions that showcase that they are human and that they are compassionate and that they can be trusted when they're in a room amongst their colleagues.
First of all, yeah, I can't even imagine what you went through, and I can't even imagine with that doing it on your own. So I think it's nice to hear that you're able to create that community and that support that you knew you needed at that time. I think it's a powerful self-awareness moment. When I think about, stereotypically, when I think about men having conversations, which is why I love that you did the whole deck thing with the cards, because Most of the time it's very like, at least I imagine, at least this is when I get together with the girls, we're like, oh, men never go deep enough, which is with the girls we go like deep into conversations and we share and we etc. And that's how we operate. But I always thought like for men it's a little bit more, surface, or you talk about sports, you talk about the very stereotypical men stuff and never really go deeper. So I love this idea of these conversation starters almost for in this deck. So tell me a little bit more about that and how have you seen it? Like when people use them, like are they open to using them? Like are they, open? Like how is that experience? What have you observed?
Yeah, so this is much like life. This is an iterative process, and so we've gone through a couple different types of decks. First one, they were, it was a darker color, but so it's called the Journey deck. It's at Gents Journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we found is different people have different responses. There are deeper questions that go deeper. I'll show you some of them in a quick second. And then there are some other questions, but they're all designed to engage you in conversation so that you can look another man, your wife, your daughter, your kids eye to eye and really connect. So, for example, there are easier questions like, what's your favorite sandwich? And this is a really fun question that everybody can connect to. And then once you do that, next thing you know, somebody's talking about, for myself, I'm from Philadelphia. I love cheesesteaks. Oh, you're from Philly? Boom, boom, boom. And then all of a sudden, you're having a meaningful conversation where you're making a friend. And so, what this is able to do is basically distill like 100 hours of conversation into 10 minutes. It's almost like speed dating for friends. And so, some of the questions, when was the last time you cried? That's a really engaging question where people truly have to open up. And some men maybe don't want to, but I think we all need to lead by example, and that's what we try to do. I actually started taking these to a local, it's called the Fatherhood Initiative in Lexington. And these are gentlemen who have either been incarcerated, jail, or had problems with drugs and rehab. And I facilitated a group of 10 gentlemen who were in a circle. And so we took the card deck around, we passed it, and there was a really amazing story where the question was, who do you have to forgive? And there was a gentleman, I get goosebumps every time I share this story, but there was a gentleman there. He was tatted from head to toe, and he had a really growly voice, and he was scary looking. And he had been in and out, guns, assault, whatever you name it, but he had two children. And in that moment, he said, the person that I need to forgive is myself. And I still get, like, you can hear it in my voice, I get very emotional to see these men that may be, hard on the outside, but just as vulnerable and open to sharing on the inside. And there was another kid. There's a question of who could use you in their corner right now. And there was a young gentleman. He was about 17, and he was, I think, incarcerated. And he was like, my mom could use me. And so, really, really engaging questions. Could I ask you one of
Yeah.
them right now? Do you want to do
Yeah,
one?
let's play a game. I got goosebumps from your stories, but yeah, let's play a game. For people who are listening and not watching this, he's basically just shuffling deck and I'm gonna choose
So
a
it's like a
card.
magic trick. I tell people this
Yeah.
is what I do in my keynotes is I tell people this is like a magic trick. It's a deck of cards, but truly the magic it exists in you and your story. And what I tell everyone is it's all about connecting. And when you share your story, we separate ourselves 18 inches from our head to our heart and we connect heart to heart because it's all about love. Okay, tell me when to
All
stop.
right. Oh, I'm nervous. All right, stop. What did I get?
Okay. This is a good one. What's one book that has profoundly impacted your life and why? And if you're behind you, there's about 55 books right on your
Yeah.
book. So share.
So many. Oh my gosh, so many. So I really like the book of I forget that I think Adam Grant, Give and Take. It's about givers and takers, and matchers. Because I always felt like I was doing things wrong because I'm naturally like I'm pretty giving in terms of like how I do business, how I work, how I operate, and I always thought like that was a bad thing because I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just too nice. So that book really shifted my perspective and it's like, oh, actually, it's just I'm just a giver in this category, and it's actually a plus. So that's one book. The other one is by Ruiz, forget the last name, but it's the oh my God, the five, what is it called? I forget the names. I'm so bad with the names.
I like Adam Grant. I'll tell you that much.
Anyway, I forget the other one. I forget the
But
name, but yeah.
Think Again, love his book. And you were talking earlier about content. One of the things that he does is he shares a lot of these, micro micro posts on Twitter, and then he shares them on Instagram. And a lot of his things are thought starters. And you'll see, especially in social media, there are a lot of people that don't necessarily want to film themselves, but they like to share things that they can align with or connect with. And so if you are a KOL and you're sharing thoughts from your book or building your book, you can break that all down and share it on social media and engage other individuals and start to attract,
Yeah.
followers. There's a really great blog too by Kevin Kelly. It's called 1000 Fans. And when you're really trying to build an impact, they talk a lot about that one-on-one. And this is what happens with these cards is it takes you to the IRL in real life or the experiential basis, which the younger
Mm.
generations are actually preferring now because of the rise of automation and AI and nobody knows what's going on. They actually want to have these experiences. And so you're seeing a rebirth and some of the, movie going experiences and getting out of the house because, we're just overwhelmed with this digital overload.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of that, this kind of social aspect, so you are seeing that more and more kind of people are getting out because I feel like it's the opposite depending on the generation. I feel like, we still have and maybe because the generation I typically work with, they're kind of like young professionals, techie. So just the profile of the individual is very like introverted and so on. They love their games, they're gamers and so on. So they tend to be more indoor
Yeah.
versus like socializing in real life. What have you seen through the work that you're doing with men? Like, is it generational? Like, who are typically the people that are more
It's
open to it?
generational for sure. One of the questions we have in the deck is what does masculinity mean to you? And that's a totally different answer. If you talk about our fathers, we've obviously there's been a big shift in being more open, Me Too, female empowerment. And so there is a generational shift as the baby boomer population, maybe there's bingo night, but for the most part, they feel comfortable in their home. And I think it's more Gen Z. And the youngest generation, my daughter is 11. I don't even know. I think that's Generation Alpha. I
Mm.
should figure that out. But though they are also craving more of the experiential basis, and so it's generational in that aspect. I also think it has to be locational. Where are you located? What are you in and around? But I do know from a mental health perspective, we worked with tons of therapists and other counseling centers. Obviously, the more we can get outside, the happier and healthier we do feel. And so, somebody like myself that's pushing 50, I like to make sure that I get outside only for my own health and wellness and well-being and walk 20 to 30 minutes a day because health is wealth. And then, if I can be outside like in the forest, if you take forest and put it in two parts, it's for rest. So when you're overloaded on this digital experience, calls, computers, texting, it's not necessarily beneficial towards our overall wellness. And so I think there's a difference in men and female. There's a lot of gaming, and that's where the initiative for me is trying to find ways that we can tap into the younger generation and have them do things that are fun. I think if it's fun, it gets done. And so outside experiences or even just questions that are fun that allow them to engage.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that deck. Are you selling those? Like, do you sell those
Yeah,
online
yeah, we
or how
sell
can
them.
people access?
We sell them at gentsjourney.co. And so there's another gentleman, he works for a company called the Mail Mogul. His name is Walter Mendenhall. He's a former Eagles football player. He works with a lot of inner city youth in Chicago. And so I think that's really where the opportunity lies is the younger generation of men. If you know Scott Galloway, the male epidemic and the
Mm.
loneliness and the gaming is we're at a tipping point, and so we're just looking to do our part to find ways so that we can understand that it's we have a 7 part breakdown, faith, fatherhood, finances of what a healthy man looks like. But that's essentially what we're looking to do is to find ways that we can show that being well-rounded and being open, and you can be introverted, there's no problem to that.
Mm-hmm.
Just find ways that you can connect, and it's connection from an emotional, physical, or intellectual perspective, not from a technological perspective. And so, any number of ways it can benefit you. You can even call your father. And there's a big TikTok trend it was called "I love you, bro." You'd call up your friend, you'd say "I love you, bro." But just different ways that we can connect, I think, is really essential in our own well-being.
Mm. It's I love it. It's absolutely beautiful. It reminds me of another TikTok trend that was like on Instagram or wherever it was on social media, and it was the other one where the guys would call their friends and they'll wish them good night, and they'd be like, "Bro, like, why are you saying good night? Are you okay?"
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
if you saw that one, but that one was
yeah,
hilarious. It was a joke, but it was just like it just showcases how like uncomfortable many
yeah.
men are just like saying, "Hey, I love you," or like "Good night." It's just not the norm, I guess. But I do think a lot of men need that. Like, it's like I don't know why we just discredited men as they don't have feelings or something. Like they need support as well.
Yeah, in my TEDx talk, I talk a lot about our spouses and our wives and our girlfriends. It's like we already have enough to sort of process with them and communicate with them, and then bringing them another layer. Like it feels like we're adding more to their plate, or that they don't even need it. So, and there's even things where you come from a place where it's maybe not comfortable to share it because it impacts you. It's almost like when somebody gives you advice. Usually, they'll give you advice based on what they want you to do. And so it's great for you to have these other friends or individuals that you can rely upon. And that's where I think simply sharing your story is crucial. And it can be even sharing it inside of a notebook and journaling. There's just a multitude of ways to do that, but it needs to get out of your head and into your heart. And I think, there's several ways you can do that.
Yeah. You also do you talk about connection and these sort of things. So and that's is that something you also do within that men's journey, or is it something you do with companies, leaders?
Yes, that's a great question. To me, at the core of what I do, it's all about connection. And so within the men's group, yes, we connect. We have men's groups, we have retreats, we have the cards. That's a core foundation. And with the card deck, it's simply asking the questions. We might not have the answers, but we can ask the questions. And within what I do with my agency, the Seidel Agency, and leadership coaching, it all stems from connection. We essentially position it as connection is your currency. And so in this world, you can have influence, you could sales, marketing, influence, impact. They're all sort of the same thing, if you will. It's a byproduct. But we believe strongly within our work for the PR, we call it purpose relations, that really it all stems from connection. And that's where I think I might have talked about it a little bit earlier, but starting with your mission, then working more into your message and then your media and your marketing if you're building from a professional perspective, and then lastly a movement. But you see it with, Taylor Swift. She's building this movement because people are connected. And the through line there are the stories. And it's being empathetic. And we are all very unique. We are all our own heroes in our own journeys. And it's like when we can take that moment of reflection and find, like I mentioned earlier, when I was at the lowest level and I turned the mess into a message or turn your pain into your purpose, that's essentially what we do when we're working with a company and we want to market them. We want to make sure that we're aligned, and we work with socially conscious companies because our mission is to do good, give back, and make an impact. So we want to understand, what does your organization look like? And when I do coaching from an HR perspective, we want that cultural alignment so that your values, your beliefs, are all in the same realm. And as a leader, when we're open and we're vulnerable, then others can be open and vulnerable and they can trust you and you can have that level of transparency. And so that's essentially the way that we position it. And a really cool thing that we've been working with are mind movies, where as a leader or a KOL or an SME, subject matter expert, you have a voice to share, and we are all unique. And everybody's out, everybody else is already taken. I don't know who said the quote, so might as well be yourself. And so oftentimes we have these hybrid backgrounds. Like for me, I was an entertainer, I was an engineer, and now I'm doing marketing, branding, but speaking. But it's really honoring that and finding ways that you can pull from those pieces to tell your hero's journey in a way that you can inspire others to do the same, but also help them be the best version of who they can.
Hmm. I like that idea of the mind movie. I think that there's a lot of subconscious things that have like subconscious thoughts that we have that we're just running a movie in the background. And I love this idea of having a movie that actually you create and you run the movie that you want to run in your mind.
Yeah.
Essentially, how does that work? Like,
Yeah.
how does that
So,
work from what you guys are doing?
yeah.
Yeah.
So on Sundays, I'm in another organization that I found while my mom was sick. It's called Meditation Hill Sangha, and it's a community where we talk and we share, and it's all about living in the moment. It's run by a gentleman by Pat named Pat Croce, but he talks a lot about the movie of me and how we all have these movies, we have these narratives, we have these scripts that are fluttering around in our head, and oftentimes we're the victim, or things are going to go wrong, or we're the naysayer. And so, what we need to be mindful of is when these negative thoughts come in. Jay Shetty has this thing: you spot it, you stop it, you swap it. That's where we want to swap it, like you said, these subconscious thoughts, and make sure that they're empowering and they're positive, and that we're coming from a place. We're coming from happiness, not for happiness. So we're already happy and we're joy, and we surround ourselves with these positive things. So the movie of me, it's essentially what we do in the work. We want to reclaim that narrative and reclaim the story. Is taking a moment, much like a visualization board, coming out, figuring out what are our highest commitments, what are our mission, the message, and all that, and then essentially figuring out where you want to be, or where you envision, or where's your dream. We don't have to figure out how we're going to get there, but we just need to figure out where will you be functioning in the flow to your highest potential. And it could be personal, it could be professional, it could be relationship based, but figuring all of that out, you could do it on Canva. You can look it up on YouTube, or I can send you guys a link if you want one, but you can build this out on Canva with a bunch of individual images. And then you're creating this little video. And then on top of that, you're going to put some music underneath. It could be a song that inspires you. It could just be something inspirational where you're just going to get pumped. And so it's similar to saying an affirmation every single day: you are loved, or Michael Jordan does. And Kobe Bryant, they do that fist, which is power, it's confidence.
Mm.
And you're going to play that every single day in the morning before you start your day, and it's going to start to penetrate your psyche and your subconscious so that you can maximize your mindset and realize that you are capable of greatness and start to push out those limiting beliefs.
I like it. Yeah, I think it's such a real thing because there's so much when you do a lot of like self-awareness work and you do a lot of work, and I'm still obviously work in progress, but you start to when you meet people sometimes, or even in a workplace, even it could be leaders, and you just think to yourself, you're like, oh, you haven't done the work yet, because you're like, oh, you remind me of me 5 years or 10 years ago. I'm like, I know those symptoms. Like
Yeah.
certain behaviors that drive, and a lot of it is through insecurities, through limiting beliefs, both through being a people pleaser, like you mentioned in the beginning. I was very much a people pleaser, and when I was in my 20s, lack of self-confidence, all that jazz, that actually it actually comes out in your behavior and how you communicate and how you show up. And it's strange because people that are this is happening to, like, they don't see it often because, yeah, it's very difficult to look in the mirror until you do, and then it's a very difficult journey depending on where you are in that journey. But it's a very difficult journey of like self-awareness, because you start to realize that the story you've been building and the story you've been telling yourself is actually just all pretty much your fault, essentially, because you didn't tap into it and you didn't change
Sure.
it, right? And it becomes hard, and that's why it's hard to change. But yeah, and then you recognize in other people, and you're like, oh, like, okay, like you need to spend some time on this. So
Yeah, it's funny because it's like you can't change. Too often, I used to, as a people pleaser, and I want to help. My goal is to help people, but certain people don't want to be helped. And so it's something, how's that working for you? If it's working for you, great, keep doing it. But at the end of the day, my mission, it's changed over time. It was like, I want to help people be happy, but I can't help people be happy who don't want to be happy, or don't want to have to make that choice. And so I tell them, if you want to be great, I love acronyms. So if you want to be great, you can be grateful, you can be reflective, you can be empathetic, you can be accountable, and you can be transformational. If you focus on some of these pieces and realize that we all are focused with the choice, and the choices of where we're at today is a byproduct of the choices we made in the past. Obviously, we can't change that. So we come into the now and we do what we can. You can have another thing we talk about in my group on Sundays is a 3-word mantra, something super simple that'll snap you back to the present moment. And then also taking a pause. We call it the 6-second sacred pause. That's Pat Croce. He came up with that. Just pausing before you react so that you can respond and stay in that enlightened state. And then also what you were talking about, if you haven't done the work, there's Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you listen to him or are
hmm
familiar, but he has his, I can't, it's like the Mind of Mentors. I can't remember the name of it, but he has these key tenets of what all these major successful people do. And part of it is when you wake up in the morning, your morning routine. What are you doing from a health perspective? Majority of these people are meditating. They're all reading at least 20 minutes a day. So there's things that can allow you to become the best version of yourself, and then also to become more reflective. It's not rocket science. Like it's not. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to deliver that. But letting go, sitting in silence, these are all things that can really help us.
Yeah, it's strange. The smallest things that are free and accessible to everybody anywhere are the hardest ones to do. And because we're such creatures of habit, and I think that's where it becomes difficult. You never, like with what Tim Ferriss talks about. I have his book. It's called The Tribe of Mentors. So
Yeah,
it's
that's the book. Yeah,
yeah, and that's
yeah,
a lot of stuff in there. And yeah, it's a lot of it is just like, hey, like just get some sunlight in the morning, take a walk, move your body a little bit, choose healthy food options, don't drink too much caffeine, don't drink a lot of alcohol, don't drink it all. It's like very simple things. But depending on to your point earlier as well, like who you are around and what are the habits of those people that rub off on you and what's your environment, it's very difficult to fall into that the bad habits kind of things. And I'm saying this because I've spent a lot of my 20s just in bad habits.
yeah,
And I've gone through the process. Like it really takes a lot of work to get out of it, but it's so possible and accessible for everybody,
yeah.
so,
The
but yeah.
boundaries for me, if as a people recover, I call myself a recovering people pleaser, but the boundary setting for me is still a challenge, right? Or there's individuals that are part of your family or friends that bring you into that realm where you turn into people pleasing mode, and maybe not having them around, or you making sure that you're not going to respond to that text message right away. But setting these boundaries, I work with a coach as well. And so instead of saying, oh, somebody invites me somewhere, I have this inherent need due to some of these things in my past, which I'm working on, to explain why, just instead of just saying, no, that doesn't work for me. And so, I do that now, obviously, but it's taken a lot of work to get to that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What are you most excited for? Let's say fast forward a year, 2 years from now, where's your Gents group? Where's Seidel Agency? What's the dream?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I'm most excited about this moment right here, right now. Just being where I'm at. I try not to act without expectations, but it's exciting to know that, there's things in this world. I'm a creator, right? I like to ideate and create things. And so it's exciting to know that there's things that I've created in this world that hopefully are positively impacting people and delivering inspiring change. So Gents Journey, yes, for men to connect. They have the card deck where they can ask additional questions. For my agency, it's working with these organizations. For example, one of my clients is Clutch Coffee Bar. It's a friend of mine. He was working at a dead end job. He didn't enjoy it, and he had a profound love for coffee. So I've been in his agency from one store up until I think he's on 20 stores right now. And so he's continuing to grow. And so seeing his success by reworking it and really leaning into what he loves and what he connects to is exciting for me. In addition, I have young girls, and just watching them kind of grow and do what they're doing. Lastly, one of the things, while my mom was sick, I found that I actually created a lot of really amazing things. And so while grieving, I tend to come to a place where I create things. I also built a podcast that I was working on for 20 years. It was about my best friend in college. His dad was an FBI agent, and he arrested the biggest cocaine dealer ever to come through Philadelphia. His name is Larry Lavin. And so there's been 2 books written on it. I've had the rights to both books, lost them, and continued to move forward. And then after 20 years, was able to make this podcast. It did really well, and now we're in the process of developing it for TV. And so, in hindsight, nothing happens overnight. I'm calling it the 20-year plan, because I used to think, oh, things happen in 10 years. But on my journey, it's taken about 20 years. So with my TEDx and my speaking and my agency, it's taken about 20 years. Getting this podcast created took 20 years, and now we have some celebrity a talent attached. So I'm just excited to see these things come to fruition. I'm a little bit bummed because my mom never got to hear the podcast, and she was part of the development process. But I know that she's looking down and watching over me while I do everything.
That's amazing. Very, very exciting stuff ahead. Congratulations on all of that. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to following the journey and just, yeah, just seeing where it goes and the impact you make. And, I'm always happy to promote and share and whatever I can do to spread the word because I think the work you're doing is super important. So absolutely, please, keep us in mind. The podcast will support. Um,
Yeah.
uh, where can people get in touch with you? Where do you hang out at the most?
Yeah, so obviously we love LinkedIn because it's changed and transformed, and we love to be around business owners and entrepreneurs. So my social media handle is at Stephen Seidel or at the Seidel Agency. Me personally, I like to hang out. I go to all the local coffee shops. I'm a big fan of, anything that's coffee, but I'm a Philly guy. I love to hang out at Eagles games. And I would also like to just share a quote. This is from my TEDx talk from Rumi. This is my daughter used to always say, "Love never ends," and we made T-shirts. So I want everybody to know that love never ends. But this is a really amazing quote. Everybody's probably dealing with something in some way, shape, or form. And in my TEDx talk, it's called "The Hidden Power of Grief." It's a quote from Rumi. Goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, because for those who love with their heart and soul, there's no such thing as separation. And so I want everybody to know that you could be going through something, um, but it'll get better. This too shall pass. And if I can help you, your company, your organization connect on a deeper level and, achieve ultimate impact in this world, please let me know.
Thank you. It's a beautiful way to end this podcast. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.